Welcome to Mainstage 3 for music educators. So, a little background on the series before I start. This is a 5-part series that I am creating for an honors impact project for Vincent's University Honors Program. And essentially, this is going to have what I have done and how I think of Mainstage and make it easier for myself. So, I'm going to show briefly my Mainstage screen and camera, show you what equipment I have. So, hi, I'm Elliot. So I have all my laptops up here. You can't see them very well, or if at all. And then right here, we have a small keyboard with some drum pads, knobs, this. We can do a lot of stuff like that. And then, of course, I have my bigger keyboard. And of course, they both work when we play. So I also have a sustain pedal as well. That's my setup. Nothing too fancy. In the future, we may hook this up. We may not. I'm still deciding on whether I will. Essentially a Launchpad Mini. Essentially, we can do a lot with this little thing. We can do a lot with these, but this thing's awesome because it's all compact. So, really good to put like drum beats and stuff like that. Loops, samples, that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's my setup. Nothing too terribly difficult. So, I'm going to go back to the presentation now. So, now that you know my setup, let's go ahead and start. So, this series shouldn't be very hard. So, now moving on. So, here's essentially a directory. I'm going to first off truly introduce myself. And we're going to get the basic overview, how the rundown is of parts of Mainstage. And then we're going to look at the settings of Mainstage. Then we're going to look at creating our first concert. So, introduction. Obviously, I've already said it. Hi, I'm Elliot Buell from Indiana, and I currently reside in Indiana. I am 20 years old. As of right now, of making this video. I graduated from high school in 2022 from Edgewood High School. Here's my music and audio background as a high school student. Been playing percussion since 2015. Been playing piano since 2016. So as of right now, it's 2023. So I've been doing this for a hot minute. Not as long as some of the folks that will probably be watching this video, but I've been doing it pretty long. I've done 5 seasons of marching band and 6 seasons of indoor percussion as synthesizer. I attended multiple all-district and all-state honor ensembles as well as an all-national honor concert band as a percussionist during my high school year. Ran soundboard for theater during senior year, and I would also help with soundboard sometimes with marching band. Not very much, but I would help with it somewhat while I was a student. Following my graduation from high school, I worked as a setup and strike technicians with Marquis Rental and Staging. So essentially, I would set up cameras, microphones, that kind of stuff for events like conferences and such. Moving on, here's my music and audio background as a college student. I currently attend Vincent's University for both audio and music, so I am a double major. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not so good. Busy, but I enjoy it. Just recently, this past summer, I attended 2023 Boston Crusaders Audio Intensive. Very, very good experience from that. Way more audio orientated than Mainstage, which is more sound design than anything. I also attended this past summer 2023 Blue Coats Pro Audio Seminar. Currently, I work at 4 high school marching bands and 3 indoor percussion ensembles as a sound designer, RF coordinator, which is essentially setting channels for wireless microphones and making sure they work, audio designer, audio engineer, and front ensemble electronics tech. I have experience with mixing since freshman year of high school and Mainstage 3 experience since even before that. I have level 3 Dante certification. I also have wireless workbench certification and Pro Tools specialist certification. Now with that done, I think that's the last slide. Yep. So let's go ahead and start really looking at Mainstage. So starting off, we have 5 areas. So first we got the patch list. Second, we got workspace. Third, we have the channel strip inspector. 4, we have the channel strips, or I like to call it the mixer. And then 5, we have modes, essentially, the modes of Mainstage. Let me go ahead and switch over to my Mainstage screen right now. So as you can see, here is my patch list, workspace, channel strip inspector, channel strips, or the mixer as I call it, and of course the modes. Going back to the presentation. So, moving on. Starting the patch list. Patch list is essentially, I like to think it as scenes. So you can set instruments, audios, and channels to a specific patch. And so there is a little hierarchy to this. I created this little example. You look on the right, there is the untitled concert. Then this is a set folder. And then I am not inside the set, and then I am inside the set. So essentially, here's the hierarchy. Starting at the bottom, if without a set or folder, we start at the bottom there. I am not inside the set, which then goes to immediately untitled concert. So that means if you change something at the untitled concert level, aka the concert level, you will change the patch level, which is that small one. Now with the set and folder one, if you change you just essentially add another level. You have it set. Most time I don't have it set. If you make changes to the set or the folder, and let's say you have that patch that says I am inside the set, then if you make changes to the folder, it will affect everything inside the set, but it won't affect the patches outside the set, like the patch named I am not inside the set. So, but if you change the concert level, it will change the set level. So that's one way to think about it. I don't use it very often. I know there is a way, but I don't use it majority of the time. So I usually will use sets and folders to just contain my part 1 data, part 2 data, patches, and all that stuff. So I don't use them very often. Moving on to our workspace. Workspace is essentially where everything you set in layout mode comes to fruition. So as I said, adjust it in layout mode, shows whatever you want it to show, and it's more of a display than anything else, but you can also interact with it. Let me show you. So obviously I showed you before my setup, so I can play on my keyboard, but I can also play it with my mouse too. I can, mess with a lot of stuff. So that's another way to do it. Moving on. So going off from here, let's go ahead and move on to our channel strip inspector. So this is where you can change the instrument, change, presets on an audio channel. Most time using an instrument channel. You can also change channel strip display and attributes, change the layers, and of course layer editor. You can change the MIDI inputs and link them to like effects and volume, and MIDI input, and of course the notes tab. You can take notes. We're going to be talking about most of these all in detail. This one is almost its entire own part of the slides to come. I want to say part 2 or part 3. So stay tuned. We'll talk a lot about this. This is probably where a majority amount of the work goes into. Or at least where, when I work, majority of the work is done. Moving to the channel strips, or what I call the mixer, is where you can change volume, pan, mute, solo, essentially, etc. We can do whatever like a normal soundboard. You can also view effects, sends, outputs, and etc. from there. So there are 4 types of channel strips that you need to know. Really, you will probably only ever use 2. If you use it for, let's say, like indoor, and you ever use you only use Mainstage for your synths, you'll probably only ever use 2. Heck, you may only use 1. That one, the most important one though, is instrument. This is for MIDI keyboards. So this would be like classic electric piano on your keyboards. Audio is where you send audio into Mainstage and you can edit it. So this is like from microphones, aux or auxiliary channels. This is kind of like a folder. You can send audio into it and it gets kind of combined. And you can essentially like set it to, oh, this is going to be a reverb one. So if you send it here, it goes to that main output and it sends reverb along the way. I'll use these ones to essentially change. Oh, well, I want synth 1. I can adjust all synth 1 or I can adjust all synth 2. I can do it that way. External MIDI is rare. I don't ever use it. Moving on. So modes, this one's really easy. This is for cycling one of 3 modes. Layout mode, setting is essentially the setting up of a workspace and assigning MIDI to controls. Edit modes, this is what we just talked about, really. This is where, though, I believe most of the work is done in obviously edit mode. Perform mode is just kind of workspace and nothing else. It's for the perform, so you have less to look at, so it's less distracting. So let's go ahead and look at this really quick. Obviously, we have our edit mode. We have layout mode, which is where we can do all kinds of stuff. We'll talk about that later as well. And then we have perform mode. As you can see, still edit stuff, but there's really kind of less to screw up here. So very useful. So moving back, let's go ahead, talk about settings. So starting with general. So this is general settings. So we can affect all the tuning right here. We can do what to do on startup, alerts, all that. So that's the kind of easy to understand for the most part. Audio. This is a important, very important screen. It's where I do a decent chunk of trying to make sure everything works. If sometimes your audio is not working, then it's usually here where you can solve. So obviously audio is audio settings. So audio output is where we can set the output device for audio. So, send it to a speaker or something like that. Audio input is where it gets the input for the audio. Recording, this is obviously where you're going to send recording files once they're done. And then the channel strip is kind of just channel strip settings. So moving on, MIDI. MIDI affects obviously the MIDI. The MIDI status is we can view MIDI inputs. And display, affects the display. Moving on from there, we have the display settings. So we can show the icons in file browsers, the inspectors, the toolbars. We can view settings for the toolbar, which is the top part, showing you right now. This is the toolbar, essentially right up here, all that. So we can set the settings for the toolbar. We can set the mixer and plugin window settings, and we can set the settings for performance. Finally, the last setting is sampler. This is kind of for sampler, which is one of the instrument plugins that we'll be talking about much later into the series. There's settings for there. That takes us to now creating our first concert. If I remember correctly, this is the last slide, but essentially we can do, this is like a little guide what to do. So let's go ahead and do this. Open a preset concert. So I've already done that. This is essentially just the blank keyboard one. Clear and delete everything from the concert. So I'll show you how to do that. So you go to layout mode. So you're going to go here. Select everything and delete. Super simple as that. There you go. So now you have a super blank concert. So if I go to edit mode, there's nothing there. So we've done that now. Let's place a keyboard into the blank concert. So I'm going to do one better than that. So I'm going to enable my camera here. So I want to have this keyboard and a keyboard for here. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. So we can just drag, really simple, and have another keyboard for that top one. Let's put the top one up here. Let's put the other one right here. So now you go ahead and go back to the camera. Now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and assign them. This will be discussed more in the next tutorial, but the next step is essentially to assign a keyboard to the controller. This will be discussed more, I promise. So, easiest way to do that is, well, this is going to be our big keyboard. So let's go ahead. There we go. Now we know it. And then this one will be our small keyboard. Now you'll notice when I play this big one, the bottom works. But when I play the top one, only the top works. So we can go even further and even set some other stuff. But we'll do that later. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and create 2 patches. So one in a set and one not in a set. I'm going to edit that a little. I'm not going to create the one in a set because I kind of explained that doing a set doesn't do that much. So create one. So one right here. We'll go ahead and do that. Create a basic instrument. So we'll discuss this more in the second one. So this bottom one. Let's say maybe this bottom one, I want electric piano. And maybe let's say this top one, if you remember, we want the software instrument. We want this top one, which is the MPK Mini. Put that up on the screen. So this bottom one, it's that bottom one. This top one is going to be that top keyboard. So this top one is the MPK Mini. So create that really quick. And, just go through the channel strip inspector, figure out what we want. I want to put bass on it. Let's say that. Let's get just fingerstyle. So now we have that's a wonderful sound. Obviously, we have electric piano down here on the bottom. Now we have fingerstyle bass there. So there you go. That's kind of really it. We'll play around with the settings later, but there's our first concert. So wrapping things up, this was really just to explain how it works. And if you had to watch one video, this kind of gave you an idea how to do it. The next 3 will be really just hammering in specific parts that are really important. And the 5th one will be mainly just practice. So with that being said, thank you for watching. We'll be back to do the second one very shortly. Thank you again.